Good morning, everyone. So today we're going to talk about how to write a semi-formal letter in IELTS General Writing Task 1. I have to emphasize this is IELTS General Writing Task 1, not Academic Writing Task 1, because there is a big difference between Task 1 and General Test and that of the academic test. Just a bit of disclaimer, I am not an IELTS examiner. I'm just a humble non-native English, a second language teacher, and an IELTS trainer. So how would you know if the task is semi-formal letter? 1. It must be semi-formal letter if you're writing to somebody you know but is not close to you. And that sets the difference between an informal and a semi-formal letter. In an informal letter, the person you're writing to is somebody who is very close to you. In other words, there is privacy, there is proximity of relationship. Second, it is such also if you're asked to write to someone whose identity is somewhat known to you, although you haven't met him yet. Um, Please don't get confused because in the formal letter, the person you're writing to is somebody also who is not known to you. Who is not known to you, and there is no way for you to identify or know his identity. Whereas here, there is somewhat a way for you to figure out or to know his identity. And the purpose is not personal, but rather related to work or other concerns. Now, why did I have to include this? Because there was a question wherein one asked me this one. What if the person whom I'm writing to, I am writing to is my boss, my manager, but he's also my childhood friend? Well, that's a bit confusing, isn't it? So go to the second determiner, which helps you determine if you're supposed to write an informal, a semi-formal, or a formal letter. If that's the case, look at the purpose of the letter. Is the letter supposed to be talking about something related to work or more relevant concerns and personal matters? Then it must be a semi-formal letter. Now, what are the examples of semi-formal letters in IELTS Task 1? A letter to your manager, a letter to your landlord, a letter to your colleague, your child's school principal, the owner of an establishment you frequently go to, and the person, as I said, who helped bring you to hospital and left a business card. Okay, this was what I was talking about when I said the person you know, the person you're writing to is somebody whom you have met, but somewhat there is a way for you to identify or know his identity. Let's take a look at the given task here. It says, you have been living in a rental apartment for the past year. Recently, a new neighbor moved in who has loud parties several times a week. Write a letter to your landlord, and in your letter, first explain the situation, describe why it bothers you, and last, suggest a solution. The one here on top is the background of the letter. Find a way to include it in your letter. And that is best dropped right after greeting the person that you're writing to. Let's take a look at the example here further. It says you begin by writing Dear plus title plus a last name. An example is Dear Mr. Brown. Yes, it would be best to drop a family name which is familiar to to a native speaker. Remember, the IELTS examiners are mostly native speakers. How would he know? How would you figure out that what you've written here is a family name? If you prefer or choose to write something which is a popular family name in your native country or home country, right? So it would be best to write popular English names, family names, and colors are safe to be um, family names or popular English family names. And yeah, Gender is not relevant in IELTS, so you can't choose to use either Miss, Mr., Mrs., or even a doctor. I mean, doctor if the person you're writing to is a family doctor of yours. Next, write a greeting. Example, I hope this letter finds you well. Take note of the difference in the greeting in your informal letter and that of a semi-formal letter. The greeting is not too private, not too personal. It is more polite, but not it isn't also too formal, which is something I mean um, which would change the tone of your letter, and then drop the background of your letter. You can say something like, I am writing about the unbearable noise coming from the apartment next to me. When you put these two sentences together, it will look like this. I hope this letter finds you well. I am writing about the unbearable noise coming from the apartment next to me. Now explain the situation. This would be written as a separate paragraph. You can say something like this. The tenant next to me frequently hold parties not only during the weekends but also on weekdays. He and his guests would sing loudly with the microphone, talk nonstop at the top of their voices, and even laugh loudly at times while having a drinking spree. Worse, they usually gather during late evenings and stay up to the wee hours of the night. You have to remember these things are not supplied and you have to supply them on your own. Therefore, as I said, you have to be creative, you have to be imaginative, but all the things you're going to include here would be to fulfill the given task. The second task is describe why it bothers you. So try to write at least 3 sentences to be safe and not to go down below 150 words. This is very alarming as it already affects my sleeping pattern and those of other tenants I have spoken to. Personally, I have been incurring tardiness and even absences at work just so I could get some sleep. I am afraid that one day a brawl will ensue among the guests when they are drunk. So take note of how these sentences are constructed to fulfill the given task here, which is to describe why this thing bothers you. And by now, you should notice I avoided contracted words or shortened words, and at the same time, I made my sentences more complex, or I used compound sentences, unlike in the informal letter. Kindly contact, oh, by the way, this is to deal with the third task, which is to give or suggest a solution. Kindly contact the concerned tenant directly and inform him of the growing concern from me and other neighbors. Perhaps it would even be better if you can make a regulation to address this matter. There should be curfew hours from midnight till even early morning. Um, Actually, you can make this a passive sentence. I didn't edit the last part. It can be um, written in a passive sentence, just so you would have a passive sentence too. Like you can say, probably curfew hours should be set. Yeah. So that would be passive, should be set from midnight till early morning. End your letter with thank you, and I'm hoping for your earnest action regarding this matter. Kind regards. This is polite, but not too informal and not too not too formal as well. So the safest is to use something like kind regards or best wishes, Sunny, and write your family name, which I forgot to type. It should be Sunny Lee. So unlike the informal letter, you have to write your family name here, which is, for example, Lee. So Sunny Lee. So here are the reminders. Once again, keep in mind the minimum number of words, which is 150 words. You can't go more than, but never below 150 words. Use polite words, but not too polite, so that the tone would still be in the middle, not as polite as that of a formal letter, um, and neither should it be too informal. Write a bit more of compound and complex sentences more than in an informal letter, or more than what you do in an informal letter. Write a bit more passive sentences, and then never forget to fulfill the given task. If you want to increase your band score, and if you're supposed to meet a minimum band score of 7, you have to use, once again, passive sentences, complex sentences, compound sentences whenever they are appropriate. However, as I said, in an informal letter, you should not do so much of that. Just one or two would do, but not much because it would affect the tone. And that's the same thing in a semi-formal letter. Although you're supposed to write more visible, like passive sentences, compound complex sentences, but you should not do it as much as what you do in a formal letter. Now, write collocations too. What are collocations? Okay, there are examples, many collocations, but we're going to take a look at collocation, two examples here. An example would be to add an adverb before your past participle, significantly before the word reduced. So reduced is a past participle of the word reduce. And here, verb plus noun. Pay is verb, attention is noun.